is straight talk with no chaser. He gives the people a voice, empowers you with a choice. She gives you straight talk, no chaser. Straight talk with no chaser. Straight talk with no chaser. Straight talk with no chaser. She provides a platform of growth and gives a dying people hope. She gives you straight talk, no chaser. Straight talk with no chaser. Straight talk with no chaser. Straight talk with no chaser.
Welcome to the Straight No Chaser show on intellectualradio.com and iHeartRadio station. This is your host, Rhea Ray Harris, and I am so glad to be with everyone this evening. I have a friend and a professional, though. She's not on here because she's my friend. She's on here because she's professional. She's an author, she's a speaker, and she has a lot to speak about on our topic tonight, Ms. Lynn Williams. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Straight No Chaser show.
Thank you for having me, Rhea.
When we saw each other last, we were talking about not just the violence that everyone else is talking about, which does need to be discussed, but we were talking about a particular subgroup in that violence, which is the girl fights. Now, I am not going to sit here and say I did not have a fight. I'm not going to say that. But I am going to say that it was a hand-to-hand and tomorrow you get over it situation. What I've been watching for the past perhaps 15 years is an escalation of violence between girls fighting other girls and an ongoing, as they put it, beef. So it's not just one fight and we get over it and tomorrow's a new day. It's fight after fight after fight.
Oh, absolutely.
And the third dynamic, which is probably the most disturbing to me, is a lot of times I've seen mothers egg on their daughters. So I want to talk about where this came from and how do we work together to stop it? Because you're also a parenting coach. So you talk about how to raise our children. And I would think that any parent that's encouraging their child to get out here and just fight to the death needs some help.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's funny because the only thing that I have a difference with what you started out was, as women, we hold grudges for life. I know you know this. So it's not unlike men who, okay, we're done. We had our fight. We're done. We get up tomorrow. We're friends.
Oh, I didn't say friends.
Not so much friends, but at least we've let it go. We've
Yes.
had the issue, and now later on we're playing or we're talking about it. Women are an entirely different animal.
You know what? I used to be that person. At this point, I'm not even that person anymore. But even then, if we had a fist fight, we weren't fist fighting tomorrow and the next day and the next day. I may still dislike you, even if I still have that animosity. I'm not going to come up to you and punch you in the face the next day. That's what I meant by that. Not that we just kumbaya, but we kind of got over it as far as the physical level of it.
But I will say that when we talked about this, I am completely disturbed about it. For a lot of reasons. But I thought back on when I was growing up, I had a year of just hell, and that was 5th grade. And I had a bully on my block and a bully in my school. And I was a pacifist. I've been a pacifist for all my life. And my mother was like, you go out there and you beat her behind, because I would come home crying. And that was the only reason she said that. But I agree with you. Nowadays, mothers are like, it's like duke it out. And And this is the whole reason that I have a program for mothers and daughters. We'll talk about that in a minute, but I have seen it ratchet up, and it's more of, I believe that our climate is the fact that we've got so much technology. We're not talking to each other. So I'm not talking to you at home. I'm looking at my computer screen or my cell phone screen as I tell you what to do as your mother. So I don't even know that you've got these issues.
The lacking of a personal relationship with your own child.
Exactly. I don't have a relationship with you. And so part of my having a relationship with you might be to just agree with you and yeah, and go back and just kill them. And then we've got a lot of other dynamics. We've got videos, we've got violent videos, we've got all kinds of additional stimulus that help you just go for it.
My son is 21, so he started kindergarten in 2000. And they were young. And he was in a very small school, so you were matriculating pretty much in the same group year after year after year. When they got to fifth grade, then it expanded. They went to a different building, but they still had the core group, and then they just had a few extra children added in. And what I started to see about that time where the hormones kick in, which was about sixth grade, I would say, was a definite escalation in the behavior of the girls. The boys had their little stuff too, but I definitely saw, firstly, I'm not saying this to be funny, I'm being serious. He had some sixth grade classmates that were bigger than I am. And I'm not small. I'm 5'8.5" and about 165 pounds. And to see a sixth grader looking me in the eye was kind of like, oh, wow. And you were hearing more about, because yes, I was listening to what my son was saying, you were hearing more about these girl fights. And it seemed to be the same certain names, and it seemed to be ongoing. And at that time, we're dealing with, like you said, a social media life, because then your children kind of had cell phones, some of them, not my son yet, but some of them had cell phones because this was a commuter school. This was not a neighborhood school. So you had children that may have been on the bus or had to call for a ride or whatever the case was, so that they felt like they needed the phone. And like you said, you've got cyberbullying.
Right.
You have all this other stuff going on. And with now parents, if there are even two parents in the home, you're working literally sun up to sundown.
That's absolutely right. And so what happens is, as a single parent, so I'll just focus on the single parents for a moment. So let's go back to not just the unit or the nuclear family that we're talking about, but let's go back a generation. So, for example, when I was growing up, my sister, brother, and I, we kind of traveled together. That was the rule. You couldn't leave one someplace. So what happened to one pretty much happened to all of us, but it was still friendly, and people could still say to you, like Miss Jones could say, hey, I see what you're doing. I don't like it. Stop it. And so you still had a village effect helping to raise the kids. But nowadays, fast forward 20 years, 30 years, right? Now, if somebody says something to your child, you're mad at them. Please don't talk to my kid. Don't tell them what to do. That's my job. And so you don't have that assistance with some of the wiser,
It's
older.
another level of disconnection.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're in it by yourself, and maybe you didn't have some direction. Maybe you never went through that before.
I know I didn't have siblings. I don't have siblings, but we went to a neighborhood school, which was 2 streets over.
Okay.
And everyone on the north end of 89th and Paxton that went to Hoyne walked in a group to Hoyne. And when we came back to Mrs. Parker's house, may she rest in peace, because she was the housewife on the block, everyone went to Mrs. Parker's house until your mother came and got you.
Absolutely.
And if something happened to one of us along the way, somebody took off running to Mrs. Parker to say they're doing such and such to so and so. And that's how that went. Even though we were not her quote unquote biological children, she felt a responsibility to us. And I want to think that it was more than because she knew our parents. I think she truly felt that we were children that she cared about. And as, like I said, comparing to my son's experience growing up, because he was a boy, I knew the boys better, but I did know some of the mothers that had daughters, and it was different. It was a different feel because I don't know you from the neighborhood. I don't know you from growing up with you. I don't know what your intentions are towards my child. And so it automatically assumed the worst.
Exactly.
And so therefore, I don't necessarily trust what you're saying about my child. And at that time, I wasn't using my phone to video anything. I don't even think my phone could video anything then.
Right.
So, you didn't have, here's the video evidence that your child was doing such and such. So you had that different dynamic growing up with my son versus when I was growing up, of just a community that had dissolved and there was no trust factor. But again, I'm going to take it a step further because I remember when we talked about it initially, there was the twin girls, teenagers in the Atlanta, Georgia area who had basically beaten their mother to death. Right, there's the face again.
I gave her the face. Folks, I just had to give her the face because
that was the first, because we were here. We
Right.
were here.
Right.
And I said, I need for you to come talk about this, because for girls, firstly, to get so angry at anyone, nevertheless, their mother. And I'm not saying there weren't some extenuating circumstances, but regardless, you got that angry that you beat her to death. I can't understand that. And so I'm looking at, are we dealing with a psychological problem overall? Are we dealing with just a society that is so numb from violence that violence is not something that you are cringing away from? Are we dealing with, because I've seen situations where people are cheering you on.
Absolutely. Not only are they cheering you on, but will not, and we all have phones, right? But
Yes.
will not call on your behalf or anything.
We're
Or
gonna
intervene.
video. We're gonna video the fight.
Or intervene. I I'm actually speechless, and anybody that knows me knows that when I start talking about issues of family, I am not speechless. But the issue that I have is twofold. One is there is, like you said, such a preponderance of violence. You see it every day. If you don't see it in the news, you're looking at it in even the comics, like the cartoons are violent. So things that we watched as kids, which were funny, which were light, even G, not even PG, are no longer that way.
Right. I've passed through Cartoon Network and a couple other that were, I thought, children's stations, and I was stunned.
I know.
At what they said were cartoons. It was shocking to me because they looked like adult level R-rated cartoons on certain stations that were, to me, designated as children's stations. So we've progressed to that level of this is acceptable violence for young children to watch. I don't know how you get to a certain age and tell them, oh, but I don't want you to beat someone to death in the street.
Right.
That doesn't make sense.
So here's the thing. You've become immune because as a baby, maybe, you're in front of the television, so you're watching things get hit over the head, and that's supposed to be funny. I can remember my kids could not watch Ren and Stimpy. Remember Ren and Stimpy?
Yes, I do. And that was a terrible little cartoon. It was terrible.
But they have profanity. So you've got violence and profanity. So now, and of course, depending on which household it is, maybe that's the way I refer to you. So I'm calling you out of your name because that's the way I've been raised myself as your mother. Well, now all of a sudden, I want you to show me some kindness and obey me, but that's not our culture in our household.
How do we because I'm looking at the serious ramifications. I had an associate that worked at Corliss High School at a point, and the discussion was about how it wasn't, again, just a fight. Number one, you had young ladies with razor blades under their tongues, and they were using them because what happens when you cut someone with a razor blade, I'm not trying to give instruction, I'm just trying to make you aware of what it is. That person doesn't feel the initial cut. So I may have slashed you 4 times in your face before you realize that something is wrong. And those cuts typically don't heal well, especially if you have keloid type skin, which a lot of Black people have. So now my face is scarred up, and you did that on purpose. Yeah, how am I walking away from that? But my initial issue was, who thought that it was okay, safe, reasonable, anything to have a razor blade under your tongue in the first place?
I'm just looking at you in amazement, because I can't even imagine. I know how serious razor blades are under my tongue. I'd probably cut my own tongue out of my mouth.
But it's that serious to you. So that's the mentality that I'm questioning, because these young ladies, some of them have children already.
Right.
And for those of you that know me, know that I do work a job where I see violence every day. And I literally see, in some cases, the children in strollers and the mothers fighting over their heads. And the sheriffs have to come deal with that. And my question is, again, if this is what I'm seeing here in a courthouse, what am I seeing on the block?
It's funny you say that, because you just reminded me, where I live, in the community I live in, we had some families a couple of doors down, not even far away from where I live, who one morning I came out and they were in the street. The two mothers were fighting each other, and their children had come out to the curb to watch. So the whole scene is wrong. It's just completely out of order. And I think the thing that you're asking about is, where do we go from here? So part of what I do is talk about how you can move back from the edge, because if that's where you are, you've got to take it a step at a time, back the other way, in the other direction.
Because the title that we were using is What to Do When Popping Off Is Not an Option. And popping off means going off.
Exactly.
You know, just like just walking up and just punching somebody in the face type of, you know, you did whatever with my boyfriend. I don't like how you looked at me. You know, you're wearing the same jacket as I have on, whatever it is. How do you train people who think at this moment that any and every perceived slight and offense is worth my punching you in the face? We're going to talk about that when we get back, and we're going to have our money moment by H. Cortez on the Straight No Chaser show on intellectualradio.com and iHeartRadio station.
Cortez, one and only financial health mentor to the working class, coming to you from my mobile command center, as I often do, aka Ground Force One. But tonight's money moments are coming to you from Wisconsin. We're actually on a family business retreat. So in the money moments tonight, I want to talk to you about that family business. Right now, a lot of you guys may call what we're doing a vacation, but I don't take family vacations. You know why? Because the IRS won't let me deduct them. Right? So we're on a family business retreat where we're going to be setting our calendar, doing some training and planning for 2017, as well as figuring out what we're going to do and what we want to accomplish in our family business in the fourth quarter of 2016. So what I'm saying to you is, if you do not have a family business in 2016, you're leaving an exorbitant amount of money on the table, because the tax code is written for business people and by business people, and you cannot access the world's greatest wealth building tool, which is the United States tax code, if you do not have a business. Now, my business we run as a family. I have a financial education franchise, and we teach wealth building strategies and principles, and all of my family is involved. Why? Because when I pay my children to work in my business, that is a tax deduction. So we drove up to Wisconsin for this family business retreat. One of my sons drove up from Kansas City, and we're training on what we need to do to take our business to the next level. So some of you may be wondering, well, what kind of business? I don't know, and I really don't care. Get your family in a room and lock the door, and do not come out of that room until you have an idea for a family business, and B, a game plan to get started on executing that idea. It doesn't matter. The IRS requires three things for you to have a business and take advantage of the tax code. They require that you work your business on a regular basis. They require that you work your business in an attempt to make a profit, and then they require that you keep good records. So what it is that you're doing, maybe you have someone in your family that executes really well on a service but don't know how to run a business. Maybe you have a plumber or an HVAC guy in the family who does that really well but doesn't know how to run a business. That's where you guys come together and you mastermind and you put that thing together and you make your family name mean something. So guys, I just want to implore you to start a family business so you can take advantage of the tax code, because that saves you money that you can then use to help run the business. So if you need consultation on any thing like that, go to financialhealthmentor.com, put in your best email address or inbox me. I'd love to help you guys get that started. But you're checking out Straight No Chaser with my girl, Rhea Ray, as your host. Until I talk to you in next week's Money Moment, get your money up, because you can do it. Peace.
And that was H. Cortez, the money mentor for the Straight No Chaser show. And now we are back with talking with my guest, Lynn Williams, author, parenting expert, about girl fighting, what to do when popping off is not an option. So when we went on break, we were discussing mothers fighting themselves, fighting mothers, and then daughters fighting other young ladies in the street. Now that we know what the problem is, what are potential solutions? Because we were saying we're going to talk about how to get back away from the
edge. Right. Backing away from the edge is so important. So just like when you and I were talking during the break, sometimes just seeing our parents in a bizarre, like, I can only imagine what it would have looked like to me had my mother been in the street fighting another woman. I probably wouldn't have shown my face. Maybe go out through the back door, for the rest of my life. So sometimes just your kids seeing that is enough for them. But if it's something that's going on over and over, let's say, for example, the way that you survived in your family growing up was to fight. And some families are like that. We understand that. But you don't want that for your kids, because the worst thing that can happen, who wants their 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old in jail? for 20 years or 30 years for some nonsense. We don't want them in jail at all, obviously. But so part of what I recommend is I offer a mother-daughter retreat. And I offer a retreat because, like you, I feel that we, in working with our daughters, are brusque. And I'm talking about, just in what we say to them, where there's not lot of nurturing or love going on. It's like, do this, do that, because I said so. And I may add some specific words at the end, right? And call you out of your name.
You're saying that reminded me of a family I know, and I know the oldest daughter. There are three daughters, and then there's a son. And she said this. She felt that her mother raised them very specifically and almost in a militaristic
Absolutely.
style, but she didn't do the son like that.
She loved her son.
She loved her son, but she raised her daughters. And she didn't want to speak against her mother because she loves her mother. Note that there was a difference. She didn't feel that her mother expressed love to the girls. She felt that they were trained to get out of the house and to be self-sufficient. But she showed that one child who happened to be, which makes it an obvious difference along gender lines, love and nurturing and compassion.
Kind, right.
And even now, their relationship is a little more on a business level. I've achieved this. Okay, that's great. Versus, Mom, I'm going through some rough times. Okay, baby, what do you want to talk about? What can I do to help? It wasn't that type of feeling. And so I don't know, because my mother, thank God, was not that mother. My mother to me was actually almost too, she was too, darling, what you need, what you got, what's going on. But she wanted to be sure that I didn't feel abandoned at any point for any reason. So how do we as women say, okay, we can teach our daughters to be self-sufficient, but we can also offer them that other side, which is that nurturing, that compassion, that this is what I've been through in life, and I don't want you to go through this yourself. So let me tell you the truth about some things that I've seen. How do we walk
do
that line?
You know what, Rhea, it's not an easy, it requires training, journaling. uh, you might take some classes, parenting, you reading some books. You first have to decide that there's a problem. A lot of times when I mention to women the very thing you said, which is we raise our daughters and we love our boys, they look at me like, oh yeah, like you're absolutely right. And I never thought of it that way because it's never been expressed. But if you think about our society, and I'm not just talking about where we live right now, but in historical perspective, boys were revered and the girls were basically the worker bees. So we're talking about generations and not just African American generations.
No.
But culturally, a lot of different cultures feel the same way. So it's a major movement. And I believe it's, at least in the way that I'm handling it, a workshop at a time, a discussion at a time. I have a book that I wrote. It's a love book for mothers and daughters because it's easy enough to tell me, go and do your chores. But it's really hard if I didn't learn as a child how to nurture and love and say, you know what, I'm feeling insecure myself as a grown woman. So it's very hard for me to listen to your insecurities as well. But that's exactly what we have to do.
I want to put this out there, and I'm sure someone's going to be offended, and I'm not apologizing. That's not true. I'm not apologizing. I'm just going to say it. What I see a lot of, and I'm not saying this is everyone, is depending on your socioeconomic level, there are certain behaviors that have become a little more acceptable than others. And by that, I mean in working class neighborhoods, for example. So I've lived in working class neighborhoods and I've lived in middle class neighborhoods. And there were on some levels with some people, different behaviors. And I saw a lot more female aggression. I saw a lot more bullying. I saw a lot more negativity that was overt in the working class communities. And my mother taught in one, my mother taught in Woodlawn. And she said, because she was teaching in Woodlawn in the 60s, all the way to the early 90s.
Okay.
And she watched the transition. She said, girls always were a little meaner, in her opinion, because she was teaching seventh grade. Again, that hormonal change.
That's a tough age, right there.
She was
Anyway.
like, they'll make you want to hit them in the head with a bottle. And she would say it. Now that's what I do when I got to that age. Let me be easy, because it's possible
she might hit me in the head with a bottle.
She may do that. So let me be easy with this one. But she said, at the time, number one, there was a respect factor that even if they were angry and whatever, if she told them to simmer down, hold on, whatever, they would do that. And secondly, she could actually go to their homes in Woodlawn, sit down with the moms predominantly, and say, hey, listen, Miss such and such, little Miss such and such is having some difficulties. I want to talk with you about it. I want to bring it to your attention and see what we can do to work it out. But towards the end of her career, she said it had just gotten, the parents, and predominantly the moms, had gotten too defensive.
Yeah.
And the girls, in my opinion, feeding off the mothers, were too inapproachable. So, and she's been retired 22 years. So we're talking about 2 generations ago.
Absolutely.
So now those people potentially have grandchildren. How do we look at a system that is probably 2-3 generations into this, you got to buck up, and that's just how that goes mentality, and convince them that there's a better way to do this, there's a different way to do this, and it doesn't make you a punk, it doesn't make you a coward, it doesn't make you all these other things that they say to be easy. How do we convince someone who does not have anyone around them operating like that?
I was just thinking as you were talking about, for about 3 years, I was teaching at one of the city colleges, and I encountered that very thing, which is what made me write this book in the first place, the aggression among young women. And one of the things that I know is if you take the time, just like your mom did, if you sit and talk. So sometimes I'd sit and have a conversation, because here's the thing, if nobody is talking at home, you don't even have anybody to just kind of throw your ideas out against. You know what I mean? Like, I'm thinking about this, and one example was I had probably several semesters of just females. And then one semester I had a barber. So I was teaching cosmetology. One semester I had a barber in the class. Changed the entire dynamics, because now we've got a guy in the mix. And I had fights in my classroom for a guy. Now, that was not initially what they thought, but now we've got to show that we are tough, like you said, that we're not punks, and you're not going to just say anything to me. But what I found was, if I had a conversation when things were cool and just talked, I didn't have an attitude. I wasn't preaching, because a lot of times young people will say, you're just preaching at me. I don't really want to hear it. But if I am genuinely concerned with your well-being, and you know that, and I've got your back, then that gives you a little, and that's really the conversation that we want to have with 100% of the young people. I'm concerned about you,
Mm-hmm.
and this is what I'm willing, let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it. I want to throw this out, because one of my coworkers came to me today because he was very disturbed about this particular article that had popped up. And it was about Gabby Douglas and this resurgence, because this was the issue the last time the Olympics came around, about her hair. And her mother, from what I could glean, was very upset, and rightfully so, because her daughter is being cyberbullied.
Okay.
internationally, but predominantly by Black women about this hair thing, because it's not what they consider to be an attractive style or managed or maintained or whatever the problem is, which I still 4 years later haven't figured out. Who cares? But is some of this, because this is how I look at it, self-hatred, because I feel that a lot of Black women look in the mirror, see that they do not meet this society's standard of beauty, and go to extreme lengths, what I consider to be extreme lengths, to not just make themselves fit that bill as best they can, but in the meantime also, and I'm pushing you down, so that if there is one chick picked, it's
It'll
going
be
to be
me.
me.
Absolutely.
Because I've seen, weave on layaway. Now they have layaways for the sew-ins. Oh yes.
That's crazy.
You can get, there's a company in Detroit, and I cannot remember the name, or I would call it out, but I can't remember it, that does a loan for your weave. I've seen recent pictures of Lil' Kim, and I'm so disturbed because I thought she was beautiful.
I did too.
And she has bleached her skin to a complexion that I don't even recognize. She actually, to me, looks like she had vitiligo.
Okay.
And and she admits that she was never affirmed in her beauty. And the girls that got the man, the whatever, the woman that was her challenger, quote unquote, Faith Evans.
Okay.
And so when I see these things, I just think about, is it a percentage of this, at least, a lack of self-love that is manifesting in how we operate with each other?
It definitely is. So think about, you're growing a little kid. You don't know that you don't look beautiful. Beautiful is what your parents or whoever's in that home over you tells you. And I say today, whatever your child looks like, you got beautiful. I love you, because that's what is helping to build that self-confidence. You ain't never nothing. You won't ever be anything.
Even the subliminal things that we're not necessarily saying, but when I say 3-year-old full of weave braids, you're already teaching her that the hair you have is enough.
Right.
Look, anyone that knows me knows I'm a sister girl pageant lover. Now, I don't watch all of them, but as far as, the local pageants, I love them. But I don't like the ones where your child has to have on eyeshadow and all this and that. She's 4 and all this lip gloss, because to me, again, you're training them to believe that they have to be fully made up to be beautiful, and they're young. So once that's inside,
yeah.
Then how do you get that out? I don't know if you can. So we're looking at, to me, a few issues: multi-generational desensitization to violence, a lack of self-love and self-confidence, and a society that says, fighting is all right, because we'll pull out a phone and video before we'll pull out the phone and call the police.
Right.
So,
well, not to mention the fact, and we haven't even touched on this, but what are they doing in the videos? Not in the videos, what do we call it? The reality TV.
I can't even watch it. Too much for me.
Or
even too much. Yeah, and this again makes it seem normal and acceptable. So I know you had an event yesterday to deal with some of this. How do we as women, because like I said, I don't even have a daughter, but I have young ladies who consider me an aunt, a mentor. What do I do to get them in a place where they don't even get on this path?
It's funny, my son, who has no children, not even thinking about it, this is what he said to me: when I have a daughter, she's going to have natural hair, and she's not going to have anything in it but natural hair. And I started laughing, but I know exactly what he's talking about. So I had a mother-daughter tea yesterday. It was my second annual, and it is really designed for women to come together with, whether it's your daughter, your niece, your granddaughter, or someone you're mentoring. So I say to these women out here that are absolutely boss, there's somebody looking up to you.
Yes.
So go and grab their hand and bring them to programs that I offer, because there are not a lot of them out here.
I actually, in the Chicagoland area, haven't heard of any but yours. And I've seen what you do, so I know that it's professional and it's filled with integrity. Now, I don't trust everybody like that. I'm just going to be honest with
Thank you.
because some people out here just to get paid. And that's not what your programs are about. Because what I'm asking tonight, and I'm not asking men to do anything tonight. Tonight, now, tomorrow.
You're off the hook tonight, man.
Right, but tomorrow may be a different thing. But I'm asking every woman who is above the age of 35 to, if you have a daughter, that's great. But if you don't have a daughter, a niece that you see, or a cousin who is under the age of 30, to grab her hand and slowly let her know, I'm here.
That's exactly right. Let her know you're here for her, that she can talk to you about anything, because we have secrets. I mean, you might be in a relationship with someone who is hurting you, beating you, making you feel very unattractive. And you don't know, when I think about some of the mothers who tell them, well, that's just the way it is.
Oh, no.
So I'm going on record. That's not what I tell my daughter, but I agree with you completely. Grab hold to somebody, mentor somebody or some bodies, because the only way that we will survive, or this next generation will survive, is with some of the wisdom that we can offer. I'm not saying that you've got to adopt anybody, but go and see them, or have them come with you, or take them when you get your nails done, or just have a conversation. They are so hungry.
I know that I have a few, and they come in and out, because sometimes they need me, sometimes they don't. But they know I'm here. But for those who are in need, and you already know who you are, when they inbox, I respond. Firstly, I pray, and then I go into action, because faith without works is dead.
Absolutely.
So again, every woman that is within hearing range of this show, I am asking you, if you are over the age of 35, to turn around. Firstly, check your baggage. Make sure you're cool. Because I know, we all have some baggage.
We all have baggage. No, definitely.
But, I don't want you carrying, a little purse is cool, but I don't want you carrying a duffel bag and dragging a garment bag. Let's get that clear. Then get someone who's under the age of 30. And even if they don't necessarily seem receptive, say, you know what? I just want you to know that I love you, that you're beautiful, and that if you ever need to talk about anything, I'm here.
Absolutely.
The next time, don't even say necessarily all that. Like, say, hey, girl, I'm going to the movies. You want to come with me? Work into a relationship where there's a rapport there, that at some point that ice will break, because unless someone is a psychopath, everybody's looking for someone they can depend on.
Absolutely. And that they can honestly talk with, or just feel something. Because if you think about it, if you look at some of the violence that's going on, after a while you've shelled yourself off. You no longer can feel it. It doesn't feel unusual to just pop off on somebody, whether it's road rage or literally just punching somebody in the face and taking what they have. That seems the norm. So you're right, it's going to take a little while to melt that ice cube that is a person.
Now, before we go, give us the book title again, where they can get the book, and how they can be a part of your next mother-daughter mentoree event.
All right. Well, the name of the book is Raising Your Daughter Through the Joys, Tears, and Hormones. I'm C. Lynn Williams. So you can find it on Amazon, Google Books. It's in both formats, paper as well as ebook, Kindle,
ebook.
Google. The other thing is that I have on Facebook a private group for mothers and daughters. Now, if you are a daughter and you don't have your own daughters, that's fine. You can still join it. But I ask you to look for that because a lot of times I'll find articles or people will say things uplifting, matter of fact, just here's a needs to know. And it's a nice way to plug in. So it's called Mother-Daughter Conversations. The third thing is, and this is what I noticed yesterday, I had some great support putting this event on. It needs a lot more. You know, it's easy to say you're going to do something. It's a lot. I could use people who know things I have never even considered in putting on an event where you are nurturing and sponsoring and loving on girls. So if you have talents, whether it's reading, speaking, social media, you love to organize things, please reach out to me on Facebook. I am Lynn Williams Coaching, Cheryl Gist Williams in my personal page. And again, I'm always looking for women who care.
And with that, we are going to sign off for the week. So I thank you so much for coming on the Straight No Chaser show.
My pleasure.
And we're going to keep hammering that theme. Each one, teach one, reach one. We owe that to our community because
Absolutely.
if not, we're going to have another generation fighting in the streets.
Not a
And
pretty look.
that's not even an option anymore. We have other battles we have to fight. We need
Absolutely.
to get this one under control.
Before November.
Please,
Okay.
before Mr. Trump. I
just had to throw that one in.
Right, Mr. Trump. Oh my goodness. So thank you so much again, and we will see you next week. Dedicate yourselves to the truth, no matter the cost. Everyone have a peaceful, safe, productive rest of your week.
It's straight talk with no chaser. It gives the people a voice. Empowers you with a choice. She gives you straight talk, no chaser. Straight talk with no chaser. Straight talk with no chaser. Straight talk with no chaser. She provides a platform of growth and gives a dying people hope. She gives you straight talk, no chaser. Straight talk with no chaser. Straight talk with no chaser. Straight talk with no chaser.